And this was kind of the essence of the TED Talk you gave, which I recommend people to watch. I'm sure we'll have links below. But there's a whole psychology, game theory, humanity piece in here that you just quickly talked about and sometimes gets glossed over in this space. I had Stanley Kulichev here, and he said, Brian, the reason I like this is because anytime anybody can hard fork and take it another direction, and that makes sure that I give the best code every day. And everyone says, okay, great. But when you think about it, you're like, well, wait a second. It's not that simple, is it? No. And when you look at the hard forks in the past, and I've had Roger Ver on here, literally giving out free Bitcoin Cash to everybody. If you want to email Roger, he'll literally give you free Bitcoin Cash because that is an evidence of a hard fork with damaging consequences. And just having the option of hard fork, like you said, actually stops innovation sometimes and stops progress. And it's something that needs to be talked about. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly that you can't count on it. You can't count on hard fork giving you progress because if a random person comes up with a hard fork, it doesn't matter how good the idea is. They're not, it's not just about having the ideas, it's about having the exchangers on board. It's about having all the actors who are using, it's an entire ecosystem that you can't move.
Right.
And
let's define hard fork for anybody who doesn't necessarily know what that is. Let's maybe you can explain it with an example or just in theory, because
without going into the difference between a hard fork and a soft fork, the idea of the fork is that you have one piece of code and everyone runs the same code to access the blockchain. We're all running the same software, and someone comes and say we should have different rules for validating the blocks. Maybe we have a new kind of transactions, or maybe we do transaction in a slightly different way because we want such and such features. So they come up with a new piece of code. But the minute that someone comes up with a new piece of code and people run that code, the chain is going to split into two chains. One chain is going to have blocks who run the old code, and one chain is going to have blocks that run the new code. And they're going to be incompatible with each other. And that's a fork. You can visualize a fork. But even though those two chains can coexist, on the internet, like you can see both. In economic space, only one really is going to exist. Only one is going to capture the economic value.
Yeah.
And what determines that
is everything. So the place where more people go will, by definition, be the winner.
And that's based on social expectations. It's not based on
tech or anything.
On tech or anything.
And that's the fascinating component about governance. Like I said, I was giving you a tour of the studio. I mean, I always see crypto as a combination of technology, marketing, and politics somehow, and maybe psychology, because you said it's not as simple. And look at Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum Classic, and there's other hard
finance
forks.
Also, economics.
And you can see how it goes wrong. I was talking to my students the other day, and tell me if I'm wrong here. I'm really curious on your thoughts, Arthur. But I called the Boston Tea Party the start of a hard fork, whereas like the American Constitution started, and you had to choose. Are you going to stay on Team Britain and the King of England, or are you going to go this new way? And there's real consequences, and you don't know who's going to win. And guess what? Your life is at stake, your future is at stake, and you have to pick.
Yeah.
And you don't know who the winner is, but you know that something's not right, and it really bothers you, right? So maybe that was a hard fork. I don't know.
Yeah, you can look at it like this. Yeah, it's like secession.
Yeah, like Succession. Yeah, like the movie, right?
No. Sorry, it's my accent. Secession.
Oh, Secession. Okay, right. Yeah.
Like you secede.
Yeah, exactly.
So like you have like, US seceding from England, and then all of a sudden it's like.
And you can see the consequences, and the market share and all of that. And so it's not something that you can casually do. No. And again, Stanley, and I love what Stanley's done, and I appreciate the point of view, but he's like, the threat of a hard fork keeps everything honest and good, but I'd like to go deeper on that, because you see lots of other consequences.
It helps. I would say it cuts the low end of the worst of the worst. You know what I mean? It's like, if things get so bad that someone, does a hard fork that prevents the system from like having a horrible fate, then sure, that fork is going to win. But the base, like how much you need to improve over the baseline to move people over from the default is extremely high. So hard fork might like save you out of catastrophic scenarios, but I don't think it's going to keep you on your toes, in a sense of like, it's going to prevent, it might prevent people from completely destroying the system, but it's not going to say, this version is 5% better, therefore, this hard fork is going to win. Absolutely not.
Right. And so that whole governance concept is baked into Tezos from the start, and you're trying to answer a bunch of these questions, which are deeply linked somehow to a proof of stake concept as opposed to a proof of work concept,
That's
because
right.
it kind of is interwoven in this model. And when you looked at the Ethereum, I'm guessing the early days, you saw potential flaws in the system that would play themselves out. I think a lot of the Ethereum co-founders saw those flaws and ended up going to try to create their own proof of stake projects with varying degrees of success or not. Cardano and Polkadot and the rest. We're running out of Ethereum co-founders at this point. So, and you saw
the supply of the Ethereum co-founder is unlimited.
I do get emailed every now and then for the new Ethereum co-founder I've never heard of before to be offered to come on the show. So you have a good point. But you're thinking of this in the early days as well, and you're thinking, how can we try to solve these issues?
Yeah. And so the reason for proof of stake, aside from the fact that it's less costly, doesn't spend as much energy, is also because there is a natural governance conflict in moving from proof of work to proof of stake.
Right. And should we define it real quick? Proof of work, proof of stake.
So both are ways of securing your ledger. In proof of work, let me step back one second because I think this is an interesting topic. You want to have open systems where everyone can participate. But in order to get consensus, in order to secure the system, you need to have honest majority assumptions. So how do you reconcile a system where you need an honest majority and anyone can participate on the internet where I can come in and I pretend to be a million different people, right? So if it's completely open and it's, anonymous, it's really hard to prevent the bad guys from pretending that they are the majority. So you need to close it a bit, but not too much. So the way that proof of work does it is say, okay, anyone who consumes energy can participate. If you burn a bunch of energy and you prove it to us, you get to participate in the consensus. And the idea being because it's costly, it's hard for the bad guy to outspend the good guys in energy consumption. That's proof of work. In proof of stake, we say, okay, we have a mechanism on the chain, which is token ownership. So if most of the tokens are held by the good guys, they are going to, we'll have an honest majority in the consensus. The difficulty with proof of stake, as opposed to proof of work, is that in order to know who owns what, you need a secure consensus algorithm. But in order to have a secure consensus algorithm, you need to know who owns what. Yeah. There's something circular about it. You can work it out. There's technical difficulties in doing it. It's workable. But that circular dependency is what makes proof of stake more complicated than proof of work to develop.
Right. And currently, obviously, Bitcoin is proof of work. Ethereum, and Ethereum, for as far as we know, for the next 12 to 24 months, will continue to be proof of work.
Yeah.
And then we have other proof of stake protocols like Tezos that are out there, and we're seeing if they're going to work, how they're going to work.
Proof of stake has won. Ethereum wants to move to proof of stake, and once they do, Bitcoin will remain proof of work probably forever. And then you have some smaller proof of work chains, but by and large, every new protocol that's launching today is proof of stake. Right. So by market cap, once you exclude Bitcoin and Ethereum, it's all proof of stake.